Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Let's hop in here. Today is Monday, July 26th, 10:59. The watch time was actually pretty good for the last video, so for a Friday in particular, that's surprising. I think it would be too annoying though to try and like whine about low watch time every single episode, even if it does have some weird effect to increase watch time. Like, one of the things I am considering, and I guess I could take some external feedback on, is not uploading the recorded versions of these videos to the public at all. Like right now, we have very delayed weekend releases of Shadowverse video game news that come out. Whereas if my last video to air on Friday got a lot of views, then all that momentum is pretty much, I think, the way YouTube works, and nobody really knows. I think all the momentum is getting squashed on the weekends by the release of the Shadowverse videos. So, yeah. There definitely is an argument to just make a change there. That would save me, frankly, kind of a ton of time, too. Like, because then I would not really have to schedule those videos. The only thing it stops is that constant number increasing, which, you know, at a certain point, it may not really matter if I have 150 versus 100 episodes of Shadowverse on a playlist somewhere. Yeah. I almost wish there was a different way to release a video and not have it published to all the people, but then not have that mess up the algorithm. But I don't think there really is a system there. I probably should refresh this, but at 40, that you're only pushing for 50 on top of that. Clearly, I didn't play any Hearthstone over the weekend, but I did play the rest of Dead Space 3. Finish the game. Apparently there's a bug where you can't use the ration seals on the PC version of the game. Either it's a bug or they just patched it out, EA did, and didn't tell anybody, which I would also be totally willing to believe that is the case too. I guess at this point, if I'm gonna purchase a pack with gold, I should just purchase the newest pack. I did see on Discord for Shadowverse, since I followed their Discord for the private match sub forum on Discord, that they're going to unnerf a bunch of cards, which I guess admits that they did nerf a bunch of cards. So yeah, that's something to consider as an issue, is if they did nerf things and they learned their lesson and they unnerf things. Although it is a 50-50 argument whether cards should be nerfed or not, depending on players. People with cards generally hate the concept of nerfing. People without cards and trying to get new in the game generally kind of love it, but on top of that, you have this issue where there's a perception that there would be a new audience if you nerfed cards, when really that new audience is small and unimportant because they don't stick with it. Could we do an open 6? I mean, it probably wouldn't hurt too bad to do an open 6. At this point, we have plenty of tickets. You keep everything except for the Phantom cards. We should, I suppose, just, if we were going to do that, look at the newest expansion and just see what we are missing. Arguably, I probably should have done an Open 6 a little bit earlier than where I am now, but it's still not a bad idea. It gives us something different to do, at least. So let's try an Open 6. Do we have any control over whether it would be a Havencraft, Bloodcraft, Dragoncraft, or Portalcraft? I don't think we kind of do. Alright, so let's try this. Do we want to go Portalcraft? Or do we want to try Swordcraft or Runecraft? How much of this would come down to cards that we already don't have? I think we go Runecraft. So yeah, the Awakened DLC for Dead Space 3 is much more of a horror game, but it really just kind of ruins the story and doesn't set themselves up well for a sequel. It's almost exactly the same as the ending of Mass Effect 3, in which there's just massive devastation, if not the near complete total eradication of the human race. And you're in a weird position, specifically in the Awakened DLC, to once again just question whether any of it is real or whether it's a hallucination, whether you're fighting anybody at all in the game, or whether you're hallucinating the enemies you're fighting. So that puts you in a kind of a weird position too. Alright, so what we need to do now is win. Win. Which of these were new? Well, by the looks of it, none of them were new, unless they just don't list things as new. Alright, so we have 48 cards. I can imagine getting rid of this is fine. We'll start with... And then we don't seemingly have too many other cards. Cover evolution points might work. Random costs. We can get rid of one of those, I think. Yeah, I don't like the idea of having 3 of those on the field in your collection. Alright, let's see if we can find some synergy here. This one puts a repair mode into your hand. Repair mode in general may not matter. Ooh, you have new buttons here. Keep all, remove all. Deal X. That's good. That might be fine. This is probably not worth it. That's probably not worth it. Repair modes might be the way we cast spells, though. Recovers 1 play point. Think we can get rid of that. Think we can get rid of that. Live things here. If you have 20 cards or less. Let's see. This would be a spell to draw cards, and it could fuse with Machina cards twice. I don't know if that's really worth it. So I'm gonna take that out. See, generally, I just don't think you're going to have enough synchronicity with these open sixes. So you are doing a draft here where you're making the best out of what obviously will be a weak deck compared to what you could build. Let's see, don't we need 30 cards? Or is it a deck of 40? Can I just have any number of cards I want? Could I get this down to 20 if I wanted to? Seemingly you can basically have any cards you want in Open 6. I didn't realize that. So theoretically I could have had a deck with 20 cards and then always activated that system. Well, yeah, that's weird. I guess I really don't have anything special to say about Dead Space 3 other than the fact that it's glitched and it's kind of annoying, to say the least, that there was potentially some resource packs I could have purchased with Russian seals, which would have gotten my gun stronger, but playing it on normal, you really didn't need any of that at all. Hmm. 50 times win the match. Ooh. Well, could you spell boost Pursuit of Truth 50 times even with a custom built card? I don't know how you would do that. Like ultimate clay golems don't spell boost, so I have no idea how you could spell boost something 50 times. Like even if I had the maximum amount of cards possible in a regular deck of 40, it would have to just be every single other card. Spell boosts on average above once. Per thing. Spell boost either once or twice or more.
We are the water. She is the bloom.
Yeah. My plan is going forward, and I'm not moving very fast today, and I probably should, is to play Batman Arkham City, because Dead Space 3 definitely left me with the desire to have a higher action experience, a continued action experience, and I looking through the games thought, yeah, Arkham City's a good one to cover.
The magic of flowers is profound.
For that, I think.
It's showtime! Blossom and flourish!
So yeah, that's where I was gonna play, but I didn't get around to it yesterday. I also am constantly trying to work on this irrigation box, and the problem with it is getting the components, testing the components before ordering more components, trying to be a little conservative and not just go crazy with it and say, hey, let's order $200 of components and maybe send back $100 of those components.
With your heart. Finally, I see someone.
See you at the next show!
But yeah, I'm gonna have to replace one of the adapters, and I've ordered. I'm gonna redo the electrical part because I want to do it the right way and make it more guaranteed to be waterproof. And I would totally rebuild the whole system the second time. I have two spigots, one in the front and one in the back of the house, so the front one, whenever I get around to doing that, which may be a year from now, I'm going to do it in a completely different fashion that's going to be much more standardized, using components from one manufacturer. It did not save me money by any means to jump around and try different adapters and different systems. I thought it would save me space, and space was going to be more of an issue, but in reality, I don't think it really is that big of an issue.
I loved her. She was everything to me.
So yeah,
You're done for. You let go of my hand. Oh, Fluffy, hey!
there's definitely room for improvement, and that's true with like any experiment or anything that you're building for the first time, is that you are going to run into this scenario where a lot of your a lot of education is probably going to cost you a lot of money to figure out how to do it the right way. Like, nobody does things perfectly and cheaply on the first try unless it's a very, very easy project. And this is definitely something I haven't seen anybody else do. So, like, everybody else just tries to put the irrigation system in the ground. Honestly, it might have been easier and better to just do that. Stress relief is definitely a consideration for that.
An opportunity for growth.
Blessed is the promised day.
This is our little secret.
And yeah, do I have anything else to talk about? Well, this would spell boost the cards. So if I can just find something to spell boost this with, so it does at least 1 damage first, that would be nice. So yeah, we should just start covering the video game news. There is one story that's not being reported on much, so I'll just have to talk about it. apparently the Superhot VR game, I guess maybe that's Mind Control Delete, not just the original version of Superhot or a sequel that maybe exists for Superhot, but maybe it's a VR and non-VR version of a game. Regardless, one of the Superhot games had a scene in which you were supposed to self-delete / commit suicide, and there was already a toggle in there for anyone who that might have been triggering from, where you could toggle off any disturbing sequence or that disturbing sequence. Well, instead of just leaving it that, which that's kind of fine there, like if an artist, and this is one of those weird situations where you can call the creators of Superhot artists, but also you have to kind of call them capitalists and just trying to people just trying to sell a product. But yeah, if you call them an artist, they in that case decided to self-censor themselves via toggle, or at least allow the option of censorship via toggle. But that's not a terrible compromise, really, to say, hey, here's my original vision, but if you want the TV edit, like every movie that ends up on basic TV gets that kind of censorship anyways, regardless of whether the artist or the movie maker wanted that to be an option or not. But then they came out and put out a comment that the quote there is, "We can do better," and they totally censored it, and so now you can't see the scene at all, and forced their opinion or the decision on to everyone else. Right, well, I guess you do this, and then I guess you evolve this.
I will be anointed.
I said be quiet.
And then hit that,
Unbelievable.
Get out.
and hit that.
Unbelievable.
Oh, last digit of my leader's defense. So this could do 8 damage right now? It's a massive amount of damage. This is a great card. I didn't realize how good that card was. I thought I was totally misreading it. So yeah, that's a step in the wrong direction. Now with Superhot in particular, it's a game I might own the first version of because I got it for free. I may have also paid 99 cents for it. I'm not sure it was a game I was ever going to actually cover anyways, because it is kind of this action puzzle game, and I do like puzzle games, but it's always never really come off as being that interesting. It was definitely a critical darling, and that's the only reason I know anything about it at all, really. But yeah, the more this step towards censorship definitely would be something I'd have to talk about if I was going to cover the game. It seems weird to even do that at this moment. It's not like those games are brand new or there was any real controversy around it. It does potentially signal an era of just insanity, like with the pandemic and with cancel culture and with SJWs just gaining increasing influence. Are we going to start to see this world where people start changing everything about their games to suit the whims of the current time, or the current audience they're trying to pander to. Cover an evolution point.
See you at the next show. Are you working, Dad?
Okay. Do we want to evolve that? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't see any way you'd get this card spell boosted up to 50 times. There's got to be some kind of card that synergizes with that. Alright, so let's go through the video game news. Assassin's Creed Valhalla update adds one-handed sword in Siege of Paris is dated. This is from Video Games Chronicle, update 1.30. There we died. I guess the question would come back to, do we... Interesting, there's this create deck code. 3 minutes you have a deck code that is a very short deck code, and so clearly this is just server side. Is this something new? Yeah, deck code certainly would be helpful for Shadowverse if they were universal. Gametsu has an article, Danganronpa Decadence, Danganronpa S Ultimate Summer Camp details have been released. This is just gonna tell you more about the board game, kind of the Animal Crossing type board game with maybe some RPG elements in it. It looks like it does have some of that. Get more characters to develop. That looks dangerous because that looks like that might be microtransactions, but I don't see how. I don't know how that would really work on a Switch game. Dead Space 3 certainly was trying to have microtransactions in it with resource packs for no reason. So you have characters definitely from different Danganronpa games all together. So this is like fanfic type stories. Here you have a lot of the characters in summer wear bikinis, not particularly revealing. You might even have some story here that's actually interesting, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it really isn't that interesting. Once again, it is only a Switch game, so there's not... It probably will come to PC at some point, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 6 months to a year or plus delayed. Apparently, like, I thought the No More Heroes 3 game was coming to PC, but it must be delayed, or I must have dreamt that up, because it seems like it's also a Switch exclusive, at least to start with. Go ahead and play this. Can't fuse in the turn. Gametsu has multi-blood type Lumnia Seal trailer, so because this is a fighting game, they're going to show every single character it's not really worth it to watch the trailer of every single character, so I'm gonna take an opportunity to skip that. Gametsu has Kochira, Haha, Naru, Hoshi, Yori, second trailer. I believe this is the Yuri girl on girl romance visual novel game. That I think is also a post-apocalyptic survival RPG game. It is kind of all over the place, but that's kind of interesting too, that you would throw in that twist. That being said, the throwing in of twist is kind of the thing that makes almost all anime style games interesting, because if they didn't have some kind of weird twist to them, they would just be a very generic experience. That being said, there's plenty of Western games that are just straight up very generic experiences. There's also a lot of Eastern games that are very generic experiences. The Neo The World Ends With You for PS4 is out there. There's trophies have been listed. Apparently some of the trophies have spoilers, so be careful with that. Gamatsu says Mobile Suit Gundam Battle Operation 2 has a new opening movie. I think it is probably worth it to watch that, because I would love to see a Mobile Suit Gundam game that's actually good and worth playing. Although the thing is, the Gundams are difficult things to try and program for. Certainly, like it's not an easy path to say this is the thing I'm going to this is how this is going to control, and thus this is how it's going to work. Okay.
A bit of magic. There's no stopping me.
And a lot of the Robotech type games, maybe not so much the Gundam games, tend to want you to be able to transform from fighter jet into Gundam, which means then you have to program two different control schemes.
You're done for.
Game of Sutra says Amazon's New World Beta has 200,000 concurrent users on Steam, so I guess that's a fairly large amount of people playing a beta. So I would think as much. Well, if this deck is gonna survive, what needs to happen is I need to be able to play more cards with some defense. Like, and if I was gonna get 3 wins, I'd have to get basically an easy victory and 2 quick disconnects. Here we have a game on Steam called Heroines, which looks like an RPG Maker game with some anime girls. $5.59, English only. Here we have a game called 4 Kings, 1 War, which I've seen this game before. This did not come out on July 25th, 2021, unless it came out of early access at that point. You can see it's mixed reviewed. Almost certainly I had this on my follow list and removed it because it took too long to come out of early access.
Activate.
4-way chess, I've never seen it actually succeed, so no surprise. Doesn't seem like it succeeds here. Here we have VR Eagles of Victorian England, which looks like it's a very choppy VR flying around game from that video. Yeah, I have a lot of files I'm trying to compress and clean up my backup hard drive a little bit, so I might be using a little bit more of my CPU than I should be at the moment, but I don't think that's causing the video to be choppy. I think it's just straight choppiness. Because, like, here's the next game, Neon Eternal, which obviously just looks like an Asteroids clone, low effort game. $1.89 English only, and that video played fine. Okay. If I could get this spell boosted 50 times, that would be amazing. I have no idea how that would happen. Here we have a game on Steam called Pets No More, which seems to be a Pong clone with a lot of animation going on it, which is way more artistic and creative than almost 100% of every other Pong clone I've seen on Steam. Several different languages. So you've got some creepy undead zombie pets playing several different fields of Pong and or Windjammers, if you want to call it Windjammers. I think that deserves a follow. That's actual polish. It's an actual attempt. Yeah, we have a game that's all in Asian lettering, and it looks to me like it's a Monopoly clone. Free to play, Chinese only. Yeah, it doesn't look visually polished, but it does look like it took the general idea of Monopoly and copied it fairly well. Here we have Cookie Space, which is just another Asteroids clone for $1.79. Right, can we start playing now? Fanfare, draw a card. Rendering Blast in your hand. Right, let's do that one.
Of the water, she is the bloom.
And then we can evolve in one turn. Here we have a game on Steam called Tube Rolling, which is just an infinite runner of no interest. 79 cents, English only. Here we have a game called The Grass, which looks like it might be a horror survival game, but it seems to be kind of too asset flippy for its own good. Even if there was an experience here, just trying to survive in a giant overgrown grass field just doesn't seem like that would be visually stimulating for more than 5 minutes. $4.89 English, allegedly full audio. I could do 6 damage on that, or I don't even know what we're trying to buff up. Let's go ahead and buff up the one with Storm. And then evolve.
The ordained hour has arrived.
Hunger is sharper than freshness.
And do
Guaranteed.
I'm just so sorry.
Here we have a game on Steam called Drive By Cop, which, yep, driving on rails, shooting Roblox bad guys is a weird concept. Like, the only way that really makes sense is if you just fully embrace one of those arcade games where you were driving and shooting. There was one very specific arcade game where it was 2 players and each player had a gun and one also had the drive. And it was just 80s cop movie visuals and mentality. And that's about the only point where this would make sense, because looking at like this, I just feel like you're teaching kids that it's okay for cops to not even bother to get out of their car and start shooting, which I think most people would say there's been far too many instances where cops have decided to start shooting well before you feel like they should have. Alright, well, this is probably a waste, but I'm gonna do this.
I'm done. I need
And then
rest.
I'm gonna do this.
And could it be clear who the best here is? And could it be
And
clear
then
who the best
evolve
here is?
this.
Message is the promised day.
Yep, I'm on the right track. I've
got the might of right.
Ew, water skills.
Okay. So I'm hoping I can play this next time and give +2/+2 to these guys. And maybe play that the next turn and win. Here we have a game on Steam called Moon Defense, which I suspect is a tower defense type game, but I guess it's more of a turret controlling game. Turret simulator more than anything. Not really tower defense. I don't like any games that have these large swaths of the vision blocked. Like any kind of cockpit visions. I would much prefer just to play in an alien ship where you could see all the way through it, or for the camera just to be third person so you don't have to see that. $15.29 English and Russian is way too expensive for this game. I suppose if you had a character that had like glasses and you were actually looking out of the eyes of that character, which you never really are, you would also have that kind of problem. Which is why we never do see anything like that.
Enemy identified.
Like, even in first person, you're really still either looking via a camera in front of any glasses, sunglasses, or whatever. You never see a character's nose or glasses or the tip of a hat or anything like that. You just see the edge of a gun and that's it. Maybe you see their hands. So we really have decades already established of correcting for a problem that cockpit games have never bothered to really address. Alright. Do this.
I loved her. She was everything to me. Unforgivable.
At last I will be anointed.
You let go of my hand. Lay the traitor low.
Did I overreach myself?
Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called My Living Things, which just looks like a visual novel
Beloved Nava.
of hand-drawn images. If that was enough, I might put this on the follow list, but it really isn't.
Sorry, but the time for games is over.
$2.99 English and Russian.
Together forever.
Next we have a game called White Eyes, which they're calling a shoot 'em up, but it looks to me like it has a little bit more to it than just your standard shooting ability. But maybe it doesn't. Regardless, it still doesn't really look interesting. $1.79 English, allegedly full audio.
Tastes like fruit juice, doesn't it?
A paradise you can really get lost in.
See, that got up to 5, which could just banish cards from your deck. But you would have to cast a spell that multiplied the number of times something had been spell boosted by 10 at that point. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Dash Dash Delivery, which seems like it's a game where you play as a delivery person according to the description. In reality, it looks to me more like it's just an asset flip game. Regardless, you're still just like doing a job, and I just don't think any game where you're doing somebody's job is going to be particularly fun. It's English, it's free, so I guess the price is right. It seems like you're running around delivering things in a mall, which seems really weird too. That wouldn't be in line with what you would expect. Okay. Do this.
Cast aside your tools and draw with your heart.
Do this.
I have been waiting for you.
Yep, this does nothing. Might as well just toss that card. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Princess in Airiness, which feels to me like it's either some game that was designed for some square ratio console or a cell phone, or it's just zoomed in a very weird way to be a cell phone game. It seems to me like it might be a turn-based platforming game where you are trying to project yourself up and jump. Yeah. It doesn't really feel like there's any enemies or much of a real challenge there. $3.59 English and Japanese. Video Games Chronicle has an article here. Final Fantasy 16 is prioritizing British English, producer reveals. Yoshida previously claimed that the RPG's English voice work was nearly complete. So basically they're having them record it in, quote, British English as the primary language, and a Japanese dub of the British English version is coming out later. That's a shift, certainly, for Square Enix, focusing on British English. That being said, if you are to take the metal sword and the armor to mean something, Final Fantasy 16 might be in a much more medieval setting. It may not just be giant swords and chocobos and giant and like more Japanese themed or Japanese feeling worlds. But yeah, I'm sure the Japanese aren't going to be happy about that at a certain point, and I'm not sure if that really is the right move. I would really have to see the numbers between how many people in Japan bought Final Fantasy percentage-wise versus how many people in the rest of the world or the Western world bought Final Fantasy, because I imagine, while the total number might be higher for the Western world, the percentage of gamers who had played Final Fantasy 15 probably wasn't anywhere as high as it was in Japan. And regardless of the numbers, the Square Enix and the Japanese companies, until recently, have been very much focused on still pandering to the Japanese market first and foremost. So it it seems like this might be another indicator that Japanese companies, much like Tencent, are trying to stop being Japanese companies and are trying to be more global world companies, or Western companies. See. Guess we could fuse one into one, but is that a spell boost at that point? I don't think it is.
Not war.
Final Fantasy, in my mind, is very specifically the type of game that would die. Totally just wither on the vine if it started to try to pander to the Western world. But it might also be a case in this instance that the people working on Final Fantasy 16 are not the same people really working on the remake of Final Fantasy 8 or 13, whichever one they're remaking. So, because of that, they may very well have a different focus at the moment.
We are the water. She is the bloom.
Guess we'll just evolve
Your
that.
ordained hour has arrived.
Respect the craft, a bit of magic.
A fitting end.
It might also be a case that Final Fantasy is on the way downward because we have Atelier Ryza and you have some of the other games, Dragon's Quest, and just more focus on other series.
I've been training hard for this day.
In a lot of ways,
You are done for.
perhaps was only enough oxygen in the room for Japanese RPG players to play a few games, and they started moving to other things instead of just sticking with Final Fantasy by default. Okay. 2 Electro Kitties in
I'm
your hand.
not the master in this relationship.
Blessed is the promised day.
First step. It's brushing time.
Still got
bit of
far to
magic.
go.
That's
Still got
still
far to go.
probably enough for them to win. Yes, it is. Gamer Sutra has an article. Facebook has relented and launches an instant games hub as a web, as well as a web app. So its cloud gaming app is now an in-browser web app rather than launching through the iOS App Store, which maybe has more to do with Facebook fighting Apple than anything else. At the end of the day, I think you'd still be fairly foolish to want to play Facebook games. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle Kojima Productions finally reveals Death Stranding sales numbers. The PC and PS4 title sold through 5 million units, with the PS5 version due out in September. I assume that would be of the director's cut coming out to the PS5 version. It'd be weird if it was the original version. 5 million units is quite a lot for a game that I didn't really feel like that many people had played. That is such a high number, and so off what I would have guessed, that it makes me have to reconsider. There must be just a fairly rabid fan base of Kojima fans, Metal Gear Solid fans, and PT fans that wanted to see what Death Stranding was all about. And in all fairness, if you didn't know what Death Stranding was all about, the trailers would have made it look like a much more interesting game than it sounds like it really is. So, I don't know if that's really anywhere close to 5 million satisfied fans.
Calling a lizard.
In a funny way, then that makes an argument that the director's cut very well may not sell that well because you didn't have enough people who were on the fence. So everyone who bought the game may have already bought the game. Or everyone who would buy the game may have already bought the game. Here we have a game on Steam called Cavern Commandos, which sounded like an old game, but apparently it's a new game, and it definitely looks like it is just a troll game. $7.99, English only. Yep, we already talked about that. I'm already at the point where I'm tired of talking about the Dead Space remake, and it was just teased. But it'll be news, so I'll have to cover it. Honestly, I feel like what this very possibly is that they're going to try and build up hype and put out articles talking about the Dead Space remake while potentially not even really making the game. I wouldn't be surprised if it is completely vaporware, and
Tastes like fruit juice, doesn't it?
that they are simply, EA is simply wasting a few pennies to them to suck all the oxygen out of the room so nobody talks about the Callisto Protocol. Like, now the pressure is on for the Callisto Protocol to put out something that gets people's attention without them spending a lot of money advertising or wasting their money on advertising for a game that's still in development. Like, and EA can just always outspend the independent company making the Callisto Protocol, and that may very well be what they're doing, is that they're just playing this cruel hardball to wreck a different person, a different team's efforts.
Cast aside your staves and spells.
Don't overdo it, okay?
So yeah, regardless of that, I still will have to report on the news. Dead Space remake could feature cut content and sequel features, says Video Game Chronicles. The creative director also wants to add more accessibility options to the game. I don't know what you mean by accessibility options when you say that these days. At a certain level, Dead Space 1 had these horrific death sequences when you died, and that they spent a lot of effort and time showing
Run-of-the-mill spell.
fairly long cutscenes when you died, of you dying in different ways. If you put in an invincibility mode in the Dead Space, you A, ruin the horror, and B, eliminate the possibility of people seeing you die. Although in all fairness, it's probably not worth it to reanimate all the variety of different deaths anyways, since almost all players only saw a couple of them. I'm not sure what other accessibility options the game really needs.
A rebellion called life.
Verifying access.
There was a point, certainly, where if they were going to make it more of a action series in Dead Space 3, it would have been nice to just been able to press a single button to launch a grenade at any point, instead of having to create a custom gun as an alternate fire mode that launches a grenade, and even when you press that button, it's still incredibly slow to actually launch a grenade or launch a second grenade.
Lamb?
The path ends here.
And there's a couple of weirdness where you can't press the button to heal and aim at the same time. You have to stop aiming then heal. You can't reload while aiming, which is a little weird. The button layout probably could use a little bit of tweaking. Alright, well, 0 victories on that pick 6, and that just explains why I haven't done a lot of these pick 6s. 70 gold. Meanwhile, as far as cards, I didn't get to keep any of the Phantom cards, I think. And it gave me, what would that be, 34, 36 extra cards for opening 5 packs. That's alright, but not particularly great. Certainly didn't help me in any way get any of these done. Wouldn't have helped me even if I had gotten some victories, actually, now that I look at it. Bloodcraft. Let's try for Bloodcraft, just because I want to. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else here I really want to read. We started with the original level design of the original Dead Space. What's funny is that you see some of the iterations that were made prior to the ship by the team. In the first chapter, you see some quarters that they wanted to do first in a certain way. Then you can understand why they changed it for technical constraints or for some other reasons. In terms of visuals, sound, gameplay, and everything, we're rebuilding all of the assets. We're not porting them. It's not up-resing the texture or adding more polygons to the model. It's all rebuilding all of those elements, shooting all the animations, etc. It's a full-on remake of the original game. Yep. See, how can you have a game that potentially might pander to accessibility when the main mechanic of the game is to sever the limbs and cripple enemies? Like, if you're missing a hand, you probably don't want to play Dead Space. Or if you're missing a leg or a limb or something, you probably don't want to play a game where you're doing that to others. Something that's also really important to us that was not there 12 years ago is all those options or different ways to play the game if you need it. All those elements of accessibility will definitely be something important to us in terms of opening the Dead Space experience to a broader set of people that don't necessarily have the opportunity or could play the game when it came out. And I'm all for accessibility. I don't know what they really could do. It definitely seems like a fool's errand to me. Like, the game already had brightness settings. It could have colorblind settings, certainly. It could have better subtitles, certainly, but the game, I think, even the first game had subtitles already.
We need balance, and I'll provide it.
It could have different controller layouts. It's going to be really hard, though, to potentially create a one-handed mode for most games, Dead Space in particular, for all the buttons that you need to press. The game already had difficulty settings. I guess I can somewhat say that it is nice to see that they aren't just directly saying invincibility mode, and it's nice to see that they aren't talking about anything that would specifically have DLC in it. But I kind of suspect this may still very well have DLC in it. Because I can't really trust EA. It's important to point out that this is being made by Motive, and Motive was supposed to be working on a brand new project that was canceled about a year ago. So they've totally been moved off of creating their own project to now remaking something that they didn't make in the first place. So that could also lead to some poor quality remake. But yeah, like I said, I'm already tired of hearing people talk about Dead Space. I want to see some reviews when it really comes out 4 to 8 years from now.
Wake up, sleepyhead.
Let's see.
Take it from here.
Scatter like the blossoms.
Crazy, crazier.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Art Fury Virtual Gallery, which honestly, this is probably one of the best looking virtual art galleries I've seen so far. Problem with things like this is sometimes they cost money, not the case here. And none of them seem to really allow you to change the images yourself, which is a little weird. I'd say the sky is a little weird in this game. It's just a solid blue color. And these are supposed to be based off video games art, but maybe this is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The rest of these images I'm not really recognizing. I guess that's a very artistic style of Among Us. I guess I put that on the fault list. What's weird though is it's not in VR. Doesn't support VR at all. So that also puts you in a weird position.
I'm already a proper lady, you know.
Okay. I can't attack this and kill it.
Metal, a silent night.
I've got all the magic I need. Is that how
So I
you
have to
treat a
do
lady?
that. And then in the turn, I think that's the best bet. Here we have a game on Steam called Present Danger, which is apparently a first-person shooter where you're shooting presents, which that's a interesting joke around a Christmas game, but
What should we play today, Roly Poly?
it's not really something worth playing. And seasonal games never seem to work. $1.49 English only. Yeah.
Power is what you make of it.
A Christmas game coming out in July makes very little sense. Here we have that puzzle parking game with more visual polish than I normally see. Where you have to move the cars in different ways to the road. Usually they're more walled off, these puzzles though. Where this seems actually fairly simplistic in comparison. 64 cents, bunch of languages. There might be something to this, so I'll put it on the follow list. It is way more visual polish than most of these puzzle games, although when you're making a puzzle game like that, I'm not sure you even really need visual polish. Alright.
I did my bestest.
Blow on, dear wind.
Don't think I'm gonna win at this rate. Game of Sutra has an article here, how the painful process of cutting ideas almost sank Sea of Solitude. In a lot of ways I feel like Sea of Solitude did sink as a game because it didn't really get any play. Part of the problem is this character is going through like this emotional journey that's like a depressing journey from what I could guess, and she got turned into this kind of shadow monster, which for the enemies is fine because they're going to be far away from the camera running towards you. For your main character, it's not. There needed to be a better art pass to this, certainly. If you compare this to like Hellblade, as much as I didn't feel like Hellblade was really a game, at the very least they made Suna look really good and have only a black goo crawl up her arm in veins to indicate darkness. But seemingly a lot of gameplay was gameplay concepts and ideas were left on the cutting room floor, which would totally explain Sea of Solitude. I still would like to play Sea of Solitude at some point, but I'd have to get the game for very cheap, and I don't think it would be a particularly high priority because it just doesn't really have any relevancy. I think we should look it up on Steam and just see what it's reviewed as in a second. Here we have OpenCritic's reviews for the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. It's getting 90% critic recommendations, 85 out of top critics, and OpenCritic ratings is mighty, which, yeah, no audience reviews yet. Come back 3 days after the game launched to submit your own review. Let's see if we can see Sea of Solitude. Or was it Sea of Sorrow? Oh, it's Sea of Solitude. Yeah. So you have this here, and notice the orange glowing has to then become a major thing about the eyes in the back because everything else just is way too dark here. The game itself is rated very positively. It is on my wish list, 81%. So people did really enjoy it who played it, but for something that came out July 5th, 2019, it's not like you have a lot of reviews. I've never made it a case to argue that the reviews were too low as long as it was above 30 reviews, but that certainly could be a case. Here you can see more of the face, and if this had been more of it and you had shown like more shoulder, neck bone, and more sleeves, and it looked like she was just wearing this dark, dirty clothing. Like all this arm here is clearly not furry, whether that's clothing or just feathers. So you could have lightened up the face, you could have lightened out the arms. It could have still been very pale and gray, or could have been very contrasted and just like pale white. Or it could have been glowing orange even. Something. Wow, even watching this video seems to show more gameplay than I thought it actually had. And then at some point you turn on the light and lighten up an area, but it doesn't seem to lighten you up any, where it would definitely make more sense if you got lighter throughout the course of the game. Let's see, $19.99. What's the lowest price this has ever been? It's been $5 4 times. First time on the 25th of November. On basically a Thanksgiving Black Friday sale. Got a free disconnect there on Shadowverse, and I'll take it. So yeah, that's just one of those hard games to justify playing when the price is always a little too expensive. Yeah, I definitely feel a little low energy today, but whatever. Like, part of the problem is I keep overexhausting myself and hurting my back more every time I try to work on that irrigation box. Sitting on the ground and working below my reach certainly is not a good thing for a back. Well, working above your reach also is not that good for your back. So yeah, it's exhausting me physically. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Pipe Dreaming VR Big Easy, which seems like it's an attempt to make the game Pipe Dream in VR, where you're making pipes and maybe connecting pipes to go up higher. But I don't really think that's what's going on here. I think this is more just an asset flip game. I think it's kind of ridiculous potentially to have a Pipe Dream style game in VR. That doesn't make the game better by any means. If anything, it's kind of making the whole game more difficult because you have to look around and try and find parts. And I guess the idea is as the pipe is dropping water down, the floor is flooding higher and higher, and you're drowning in it. Yeah. It definitely feels like something that you could probably do as a mini game or even as a cutscene in a game where you have to connect a few pipes to stop the water from drowning you and get out through the top. But then you also would have to like justify why you can't just swim in the water. If that was the case. Let's see. Well, I guess I'll put this on the fall list, but I suspect it won't get reviewed ever. $14.99, English, allegedly full audio. It's something different at the very least. I guess I should applaud that instead of just a standard VR game where you're shooting a bow and arrow. Gametsu says Mortal Kombat 11 sales have topped 12 million, so it's fairly high numbers too. I think I may have just lost the plot, as it were, as far as what the average number of a AAA game's sales is. The total franchise apparently has sold 73 million. Here we have a game on Steam called Monster Academy, which is tagged as a dating sim / RPG maker game. We haven't seen anything literally tagged RPG maker in a long time. $2.54, English only. Obviously there's nothing of real interest there.
That soul belongs to me.
Hit that one, hit that one. Well, that didn't quite work the way I had hoped it would have. Let's see. There's really not a lot to say here, but there was an internal memo, according to Gamma Sutra and other sources I saw, that says Activision sent out this internal email saying that it was the lawsuit that is actually hurting the company, and basically blaming the lawsuit instead. That people put out the entire email, and employees and general people felt like the responses was childish is the best way I think people took it. It's a real no you type response. Now, at a certain point, I could almost see Activision thinking they might be able to get away with that kind of email and that kind of response, because their claims are that they worked with the investigation, and their claims clearly are going to be that the state of California has it out to get Activision.
Look, thanks for the song.
Which I can't really agree with that. Like, I think any claim that the California prosecuting system, California prosecutors might be ambitious and or overly ambitious or just out to get people, always gets paired with the fact that the people they're out to get are completely and totally guilty, and they just tend to be super rich corporations or super rich people that are used to getting away with everything. So
Save yourselves.
like, the thing Activision Blizzard has not even bothered to do so far is come out and deny all the claims or speak a different truth or even file a counter claim in court. At least one that we've seen. And certainly I have a bit of a tinfoil hat desire to want to put on the tinfoil hat and say that this whole reporting and the way it's reporting from Gamma Sutra and Bloomberg's Jason Schreier is really just Jason Schreier once again trying to get as much press as possible by putting out fairly sensational articles, but unfortunately Jason Schreier's reporting seems to be the solid. If anything, he seems to be the best reporter as far amongst the mainstream video game media to exist, and the only thing I could suspect is that Bloomberg has given him more access and resources than any other video game developer, video game reporter has ever had. That's the only thing I can assume. And it's not just Jason Schreier, it's also Axios' Megan Farrock-Manish. Farrock-Manish, I suppose is how you pronounce that. So, yeah. Not that I wouldn't be surprised one bit if video game journals colluded together and to put out a close to false story or a shifted in narrative. But this Activision Blizzard suit has just way too much smoke for there not to be fire. Like, we've just seen way too much. Way too many people leave Activision Blizzard. Way too much claims come out. Like, pretty much everybody loves the hate.
Nothing personal. It's justice.
Everyone loves to hate Activision Blizzard at this point. Let's just keep on going. Moving on. We have a Gamma Sutra article, Washing Away the Warriors inside the surprising relaxing design of Power Wash Simulator. Here's a little video trailer. Power washing is technically somebody's job, but I don't think I can just use that as an excuse to ignore the fact that it also is something that I think a lot of people would like to dip their toe in without ruining or breaking things. It is very possible to mess up a surface with a power washer. So there may very well be an argument towards a game like this. It also creates more of a peaceful first-person shooting type experience. But I could also be very, very well turned to believe that it is more just a joke game and not really worth the time. Here we have a game on Steam called Escape the Office, which looks like it's a frustration flinging platforming game where you're dragging the player on a chain or rope. $1.79 English only. Neo, the world ends with you has a Metacritic score of 83, and the Switch version also has a Metacritic score of 83. So that was a PS4. No, this is the PlayStation 4 version. Yeah, the other one was the Switch version. Here we have a game on Steam called Dark Lord Peacemaker, which just looks like an RPG game. Kind of looks almost like a Game Boy game turned into an RPG. English not supported, $8.24, Chinese only. Let's go ahead and play some of these cards. Let's see. Microsoft Europe put out this story of a accessible cockpit experience for Flight Simulator. Which, yeah, I don't know how you really play Flight Simulator with that kind of experience. You're gonna have to make very custom settings for each person's specific ability and mobility. And yeah, it's kind of the problem with real accessibility as a conversation versus false accessibility, just saying we want to make this so that people that don't play games can actually play the game, which in a circular logic is just insanity, because people that don't play games aren't good at games because they don't play them, and they won't play them. Like, I know people, I know tons of people that would never play a game, young or old, that in the same way that a lot of people don't read books, including me. I don't read novels, don't have time for them, don't have interest in them. Like, there's just always going to be a percentage of people that don't play games, or can't play games. So when you look at a picture like this and you're seeing somebody is trying to assist each of these people to play Flight Simulator, well, you probably need some kind of custom board for each of these people if they're in a chair. Otherwise, if they can reach forward, they can, or roll under a table, they can do that. This guy seems like he can press some of the buttons on this flight stick, but not all of them, and he probably can't press all the buttons here. Each one of her hands seem to be not that ambidextrous. His hands looks like that's completely bandaged, so he can only play one-handed. He could probably play fine with both hands. There's no telling as far as their dexterity, though, and their mental acuity, as far as how much they could understand in a particularly complicated game like Flight Simulator. Like, honestly, I don't know if Flight Simulator is accessible even for me. I would generally, just by appearance, assume that this kid is younger and thus more willing to play, more energetic, more willing to learn how to play. But also, this kid seemingly has just a leg missing, and I suspect he has some kind of port or damage on his head, and he's not just wearing a hat as a yarmulke. I think maybe he's just wearing a yarmulke that is not centered, but I think that's pinned down because that's actually covering where he's had brain surgery, and there's probably a big scar there. In a lot of ways, this feels like it's just kind of cruel to try and get somebody to play such a complicated game when you really should be giving them a much more simple game than that. And this really is just using this as advertisement. And let's be honest, Microsoft, whether it's Microsoft Europe or Microsoft anything else, has been using the idea of being more accessible for its advertisement way more than it's actually been accessible. It could have easily implemented some basic rules of being colorblind friendly and things like that, or having subtitles mandatory in its games, but it hasn't done that at all. And Microsoft did not make the accessibility controller. It just partnered with another company to make the accessibility controller, which isn't even being shown here because the accessibility controller, as it's currently built, is too expensive and kind of pointless. What they needed was just the back part of the accessibility controller in which you could plug in a mix and match of other assistive technology devices. The big buttons and the D-pad on the front of it were really just put there to make it look something like a Microsoft controller. Probably should have evolved that. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else I want to really say there. Yep. Honestly, I would like to see half, if not most, of the conversations around accessibility disappear, and we get back to just the conversation of making good games. We're about making good games and not limiting the creators to make good games as a concept.
I'm already a proper lady, you know. Thanks for the soul. I'm gonna crash.
Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says the former Blizzard boss says he's ashamed of recent allegations. It feels like everything I thought I stood for has been washed away. In all fairness, I think the story around the former Blizzard boss is that he was kind of forced out Mike Morihime. Here we can show it. He was kind of forced out / bought out of Blizzard when the merger with Activision and Blizzard happened. So he's wanted to be able to take control, but I think he wants to take control at a cheap price, which is kind of true for a lot of people who have been forced out or bought out of their companies. And I don't know if really there's much that would have been different when you're saying that there was this entire institutionalized bro culture in Activision Blizzard. Like that, some of that must have come from Blizzard too, and not just all Activision. Some of that was already planted as a seed even when Mike Morihime was there. I would assume. I suppose it's possible that a whole new company buys you out and the entire culture changes overnight, and there's a whole bunch of new hires that are inappropriate people, and I suppose that's a possibility, but I wouldn't really immediately assume that's what happens. Video Game Chronicles has an opinion piece, or they call them analysis, who's working on the Dead Space remake. Veterans from Ubisoft, BioWare, and more are working on the EA Motive revival. But in all fairness, when EA Motive was working on a new game, that was the point to be excited to have veterans from Ubisoft, BioWare, and more. At this point, I don't think you really can be hyped on the fact that a group of people who worked on some games, I mean, these are games I recognize, but there's you'd have to see, like, the creative director for For Honor's not really a great job listing. The art director from Dead Space 2 and Arkham Origins is probably a good pick. Producer for Assassin's Creed Unity isn't a great pick, really. User interface for Valhalla, I don't know, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. Let's see. Video FX artist from Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Development manager from Star Wars Squadrons. Writer from Mass Effect Andromeda, that's not a good pick. Yeah, so there's a lot of names there that aren't particularly associated with great work. They're associated with mediocre work at best. Like, if the writer from Mass Effect Andromeda is in charge of potentially tweaking or rewriting Dead Space, that's a fairly large concern. If you have the producer of Assassin's Creed Unity in the mix, that's a bit of a concern. But that is also digging far too deep, because you just never know. Unless you actually were there, you're never really going to know who was to blame for any one failure, and usually the assumption is it's upper management. And that is much more my concern with the Dead Space remake, is that EA is just going to slash the budget and rush the game out as quickly as possible. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says Halo's Infinite first playable preview will kick off as soon as next weekend. An Assassin's Creed Valhalla update will introduce level scaling next week on July 27th. Okay, it's kind of weird that the game wasn't level scaling to start with, since they turned the whole series into an RPG. A Assassin's Creed Valhalla hotfix addresses an inability to use permanent boosters, and they're talking all about the same 1.3.0 update, but clearly there are several different things. Discard 2 cards. I think you do this.
Spinball, spin!
And then you do and evolve.
Scatter like the blossom.
And then we attack. Let's see. Here we have Babylon's Fall beta version is on Steam now. Although I don't know why you really would want to play the beta version. I'm not even sure if it is a single player or multiplayer game. Let's see, it's a closed beta. Nobody was particularly impressed with Babylon's Fall. It does kind of feel like it's trying to be more of a Dark Souls type game, but from Square Enix. But I don't think anybody really even knows what it is. Okay. Play that.
Has a different value.
And then do we save and evolve? I don't think we do.
Flash of metal, a silent night. Fame will your life play out?
Honestly, what Babylon's Fall looks to me like they took that Korean manga, Tower of Gods, which was very popular, say a year or two ago, and they said, how can we turn a video game to kind of look like this and capitalize on it? Unfortunately for them, I think the talk around Tower of Gods was more of a flash in the pan than anything.
On
Yep.
to the next life.
This might also be more of an Overwatch game than it seems. Let's see, we already talked about that article. Already talked about that. Got some duplicate tabs here. Yeah, we have a soccer cup solitaire. Jeez, I'm not pronouncing half these words today. Does seem like there might be something slightly different to this idea than just your regular solitaire game. $5.39. I'll put it on the follow list, but I probably wouldn't put it on the wish list. Let's see, play that. Play that. In the turn. Let's see, here we have a game on Steam called Yumi 2 Sleepless Night, which looks to be just a fairly better looking asset flip adult game. Definitely you have what looks like a Chinese game where she's in a Chinese dress and she's in some scantily clad poses, or showing off leg and side boob and back. It kind of looks like it's a game where you just walk back and forth and maybe there's some horror elements to it. It's tagged as an action RPG. $3.59. The thing I guess I would really want to see here says it has nudity and sexual content in it. I guess what I'd really want to see though is there a Yumi 1? Or did that get forgotten about?
Will it be crimson red?
Your head and body must part ways.
Like that. Let's see. See if there's a Yumi 1.
Tell me what to do, please.
There's a Yumi 1. It came out January 14th of 2021. It's tagged straight as having sexual content. And it looks very much like the same game, or very similar game, and it too is mixed. Which, at a certain level, that means the review system is actually working on Steam somewhat, because we are getting these scenarios where games, people are trying to flood games on the Steam and people are bothering to actually review them and counter the idea of just flooding Steam with more garbage games. Okay, gonna play that for free. Could do what? Put that on the field, I guess. Guess we'll do that.
What is necessary?
We'll just leave it at that. Next we have a game on Steam called Sport Shooter, which looks like it's an asset flip shooter game. doesn't seem to be showing the targets well enough. It's kind of the problem, is that if this was skeet shooting, I'd want to see more instances of actually shooting skeet. If this was target shooting, I'd want to see more instances of targets. Here we finally, on like the 10th shot, have an interesting layout of small metal shots. Shooting gallery type thing. This looks a little bit more polished than your standard asset flip game, but kind of have a hard time thinking this is actually going to be good. I want it to be good though. Early access $12.99. This I think is where you would want to go with a shooting game too, is to have metal targets and paper targets and things like that instead of shooting real animals. I think people are going to lose a taste for hunting so much. Right, is there any way I can survive this next turn? Okay, you gotta kill this first. And then I guess we'll play this, but I don't think that's gonna work.
Of pox on them. Allow me to take my cut.
Yep.
I am reactivated. Like the moon on the water's surface.
It kind of sucks that anytime you're playing against anyone with Portalcraft now, you have to just assume that they're playing that one card strategy and that one meta deck. And that is, of course, always the problem with any collectible card game, is that if you don't have enough variety in your expansions and everybody's just playing the one top tier meta deck that you made, in this case they made the top tier meta deck very accessible and easy to get and very obvious by just giving pre-built decks to players.
Activate. Enhance.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Misha Adventures, which just looks like a coin collecting platformer game. Doesn't look particularly good. $2.39 English only. Tagged as a visual novel for some weird reason. It's like, it just doesn't feel like there's enough gameplay mechanics there. Here we have a game called Cube Puzzle, which is a sliding puzzle, much like parking the cars. And this is typically what you see, is you'll see just cubes that you have to slide out of the way instead of cars that are better looking. That being said, I think this also deserves to be on the fall list just in case this is a better game with more levels. English full audio, $2.99, 15 levels. Unfortunately, makes that a joke. That's ridiculous. I don't even know why you bother to list a game with only 15 levels. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Dream Mirror, which looks like it's a bunch of asset flip locations where you can walk around in VR and probably not do much of anything. It's got a 7 in the corner to kind of make it feel like it's Peggy 7. But it doesn't actually say Peggy or anything. $24.99 says it's easy for everyone in that case. We still have a fairly high instances of games just saying they've been rated by the ESRB when they really haven't been.
You must make the first move.
Next we have a game on Steam called Metro Sim Hustle, which just looks like it's an asset flip game. Again, just a whole bunch of random stuff happening, tagged with nudity. $17.99 English full audio.
Where are you?
See, the problem with a game like that is if it is an adult game, it looks incredibly boring as an adult game. If it's not an adult game, it looks incredibly boring as a non-adult game. So the whole game falls apart with its randomness.
Spin ball, spin! It's your throw.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Thalasphobia. I don't know what Thalas or would be, or Thalassiophobia.
Fine threads you have.
Maybe it's pronounced Thalasio.
This'll be over quick.
Still have no idea what that would mean. Giant creatures. Yeah, Lovecraftian kind of tower defense game, it looks like.
What fine threads you have.
With some point and click adventure elements. $6.29 English and Russian. I don't think there's really a game here, and you've got a lot of dark screenshot syndrome going on. So I think I can skip that game. I think that's a pass. Damage from effects 2. Yes, that means this is probably the best card. And do that.
Scatter like the blossom.
Awaken, for the end is you've been chosen. You've
Okay.
been chosen.
Go ahead and hit that, I guess. Next, we have a game on Steam called Sheepy, which looks like you're playing as a sheep, doing some platforming. It's funny, we've seen more of these platforming games lately, way more than we've seen in the previous months, or at least the ones I remember.
A fitting end.
This game is free, English only, so check it out if you're interested. I'm not. Here we have a game called Road Bustle, which looks like it's kind of like a Crossing the Road Frogger clone. Which at a certain level, playing as a frog makes more sense than playing as a human crossing roads, because the moral thing to teach people and repeat over and over again is to not cross roads outside of crosswalks or using pedestrian bridges or things like that. Not to risk their life to save themselves maybe 5 minutes of walking.
I'll open the way. You follow behind.
Whereas, like, same scenario though. A frog, you can understand why a frog would cross a road. Oh, and you could play along with that story easier. I hope my video is not messing up terribly here. Like, looks like all my preview windows all of a sudden just
Life's a game.
shrunk
May
down.
as well have fun.
So, yeah, I hope that's working, but I don't know. I shouldn't have had so many things running in the background at the same time. I'm definitely noticing some rendering lag and some skipped frames due to encoding lag, although they are in the hundreds and not, so they're less than 1%. So it really shouldn't cause any kind of problem.
Each life has a different value.
Let's see.
Will it be crimson red? I go with the wind.
Next, we have a game on Steam called Save the Unicorn, which seems like it's a side-scrolling helicopter shooter game. I don't really get the unicorn reference. 59 cents, English only, nothing there interests me. Here we have a game called Farmageddon, a Cattle Royale, which sounds like a funny title, but the actual game does not look visually polished enough. And I don't know if you really could make a battle royale that had in-app purchases where you're playing as cows, English only. Yeah, I don't think that really would catch people's attention. One of the things that's interesting about the Callisto Protocol is the fact that it is supposed to be in the PUBG universe. I wouldn't be surprised if it really isn't in the PUBG universe, because I don't know really what the PUBG universe even is supposed to be. Like, when you have a title like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, that doesn't really give a lot of indication that there is some deep storyline happening. And I don't feel like any battle royale game really needs that deep of a storyline.
What you need is a nice roaring flame.
Alright. That'll probably do well. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Source of Survival, which seems like it's a survival zombie game. I haven't actually seen any successful game where you are building buildings and fighting zombies. It's always been something slightly off from a zombie. Maybe that's because zombies are boring and played out. This definitely doesn't look particularly more interesting than playing Raft or playing any of the other survival games out there. I would say this building mechanic seems to be maybe a little bit more complicated than some of the other games I've seen. If you did just want to use it to build your own kind of beach house, but even if you were going to do that, this is still probably not a game worth owning to accomplish that. Free to play, I guess it's a bright price. English full audio. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Raider Bots, which just looks like an asset flip real-time strategy board game. It's tagged real-time strategy. I would have kind of guessed maybe grid-based board game or RPG from this image. $9.89, English only. Let's see. 3 play points for doing this. Rush. 3 defense. That's probably better. Should probably put that on the field.
Blow on, dear wind.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Blast Fort, which looks like nothing. It's coming soon, apparently, with an expansion pack for $2.39, English only. Here we have a game called Sir, which is tagged as a survival horror. Seems like maybe the guy's in a wheelchair, and it's an RPG Maker type experience. Being stuck in a wheelchair but then being in pixel art, I think is not really a good combination. $6.64, English, Spanish, Latin America, Portuguese, Brazil. I'm willing to give this a chance though and see if maybe there's like a really good story around that, or a really emotional story around that. But I wouldn't be surprised if there is really nothing special there.
Silent night.
Like so many times we've seen pandering games that exist and were created only to make them look like they were social justice warrior type games, or they were SJW games that are just pandering, but are at the end of the day still terrible games. Much like Trouble in Johnny's Room, which I think we had already talked about. Trouble in Johnny's Room as free game English, doesn't look interesting. Here we have a game called Frail Faces, which looks very different. It's probably not going to make it to the wish list, but I was going to give it a chance. It's English and Russian, $4.40. I think we had maybe already talked about that game. RetroArch version 1.9.7 has been released. I'm not sure if there's really too much new. They do have the Retro Mini RS90. A new platform port has been added for the Retro Mini RS90 and similar devices. Game Boy SP has been optimized and tuned for the PS2. Wii U users benefit quite a bit. Switch users should benefit from 7-zip compatibility added to this release. Okay. This very well may be the Retro Mini RS90. It looks like a Game Boy to me, but it may very well be something different. Libretro still has not been released on Steam, and it's questionable if maybe it just never really is going to be allowed to be released on Steam. RetroArch, Libretro, same name. You can get RetroArch on the Amazon App Store. Or you could just download it directly for cell phones, Android phones. Certainly, if Steam runs Libretro like perfectly on the Steam Deck, which we've kind of lost interest in talking about the Steam Deck until they have something new to say at this point, or I have. But yeah, if Libretro supports the Steam Deck and runs it flawlessly on SteamOS, then you are potentially going to have a very nice device that can play a lot of really small old retro games, ROMs, better than which would make the Steam Deck a lot more useful as a portable device, considering how the Steam Deck trying to play even 10-year-old AAA games is either going to run it at a low resolution at 60 frames or maybe even 30 frames per second for somewhere between 2 to 8 hours, which isn't as much as you would like. You would definitely like to be able to potentially have the Steam Deck run for 12 hours and have a lot more possibility and variety.
Some things are worth living for.
There's a lot of thought that certainly needs to happen as far as what is your Steam Deck experience if you take your Steam Deck on a vacation with you. If you hopped into a plane, drove across a far distance or something like that, and you just can't get back to your home base or to any place that would let you download in a reasonable amount of time any new games. What can you load up the Steam Deck with? And the way it's been sold right now, you could probably load up the Steam Deck with 3 or 4 really big AAA games and play those, or you could load it up potentially, if you get RetroArch running on it. 10,000 old games, like a huge collection. There's almost an argument if Steam Decks got really cheap, or if they got kind of old and the first generation of Steam Decks had been replaced with a new generation of Steam Decks. There definitely is an argument that having an older first generation Steam Deck just for retro games, and then having a newer generation for newer games might work very well. In the same way that the Switch Lite, I think, works fairly well as your second Switch. It doesn't work particularly as well as your first Switch because you can't dock the Switch Lite, which I didn't know that. I just learned that this week, that you cannot get the video to come out to USB-C on the Switch Lite, even though that really makes no sense. So, yeah. I guess we'll evolve that.
Scatter like the blossom.
Where should I drop this
Ow, my thumb still hurts.
My hand slipped.
See you at the next show.
From working with pliers and trying to tighten down leaky piping adapters that
Who should I pair up next?
are never gonna not stop leaking because they're just effective. Anyways, back to video game news. Let's hurry up and finish.
Factor.
Dragon Age 4 is reportedly on schedule and could be released in 2023. Okay, good to know.
Now I feel like crying.
I suppose with that kind of timeline, there's not a huge rush to potentially try and play the original 3 Dragon Age games. That being said, I think the Dragon Age series is pretty long, so you may not actually have enough time to play all the Dragon Age games up until this point. If you even need to play the previous 3 Dragon Age games, or any of the previous Dragon Age games, maybe 4 is just a good point to start.
On to the next experiment.
I could have played this card to kill that better and cheaper. There is something, I saw the meme picture for Skyrim where they're joking about the fact that every time you play Skyrim you eventually just end up being another stealth archer. And certainly that was my experience with Skyrim too. I had to bend over backwards to try and force myself to play as anything else, and even at that I only did that really in the DLC sections. There definitely is something where Skyrim is probably a master class of, or somebody could research it to teach a master class on bad classes in video games, because it is the ultimate example of a bad class system, obviously, because every single player, or at least the vast majority of players, end up playing the exact same way. Okay, well, what do we want to do? Just put that on the field?
To a new world.
Nope.
This world is filled with mystery.
Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Box and Ball, which is just a physics game. $3.74, English only. Here we have a game called Red Frozen, which is just an asset flip Russian game, English and Russian survival.
Well done.
I feel like maybe a lot of these games we had already talked about.
Learn what is needed.
I can see the beginning of the end. Good. Here we have a game on Steam called Dark Side of Fate, which just looks like a RPG game. Not even sure if this one really is made with RPG Maker. 59 cents, English only. Okay. What can we do? Just hit this one, I guess. And then evolve.
Metal, a silent night.
Where should I drop this lightning bolt? Oops,
Hit
my hand
that.
slipped.
Stay safe, my sovereign.
Your mincemeat.
Here we have a game on Steam called Alley Cats Bowling, which looks like it's just a joke game trying to be a bowling game, which is kind of a shame because we really don't have any bowling games on Steam. $1.99, English only, not VR. I think VR would probably help a bowling game a lot.
I'll lay a flower in your memory.
Here we have a game called 2036 AD Secretary Stores. It says over here, cute AI visual novel. Animation doesn't look terrible, but the actual game looks to be kind of nothing with very few backgrounds. So it seems like what you're really gonna do is just see these probably purchased or images over and over again. This is apparently a prequel to another game, so it's free, English and Japanese. So if we look at this other game, we can see that this came out May 11th, 2018, and it has 30 positive reviews, 93% of them being positive. Which is weird, certainly, because now you have this prequel to a game that has no relevancy from Sekai Project that is on my wish list for $14.99 and has only gone as low as $7.49. But honestly, I would half say I should just take it off the wish list. I just don't think it really deserves to be there.
To desire transformation is sin.
Yeah, I think this game has to leave the wish list. Like, as my standards have gone up a little bit on visual novels, this one just I don't think is good enough.
Like the moon on the wall.
Here we have a game on Steam called Your Adventure, which just looks like a low effort MS Paint adventure game, RPG game, free, English only. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna get too far today. Like, ideally, I could get 2 more ranked matches with Bloodcraft really quick, and then that would leave only 1 daily quest to do, but I don't think that's really what's going to happen. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has a job listing here. Egosoft is hiring a senior game programmer. This is for Warselin, Germany.
Activate. Enhance. Fire.
Next we have a game on Steam that's just bracket 3 bracket. Although I don't know how you'd really pronounce that. Like what symbols those really are. This looks like it's a Chinese low effort game. Seems to be half visual novel with a little bit of shoot 'em up stuff. $2.99, Japanese, not Chinese. Alright, I was wrong about that. It definitely feels all over the place. Here we have a game called Captain Bones Prologue. Is there a Captain Bones, or is this the prologue for a game that has yet to come out. It's free. Yeah, and Captain Bones is coming out in Q1 of 2022, so we can just wait to see if the real game comes out. I'd probably reject it as looking like just a low polygon survival game anyways, but maybe there's enough polish here and enough variety here to overcome those criticisms. Here we have a game on Steam called Slip and Slide, which is just a sliding on the ice box puzzle, box pushing type game. $1.99, English only. Nothing there. Here we have a game called Stupid Puzzle Game, which if you're going to insult your own game, I'm not going to be interested in playing it, almost certainly. $1.99, bunch of languages, 50 puzzles. Here we have Chimera's Cursed and Forgotten Collector's Edition, which this is just a big fish game, hidden object game. Back to $8.99, English, allegedly full audio. I would take that with a grain of salt. I imagine there's only a few lines of dialogue. Here we have a game on Steam called No Hope, which looks like it's a low polygon horror game, trying to be something kind of like survival Silent Hill or Alone in the Dark, but yeah, you can't make a game like that with that level of graphics in 2021. $3.19, English, Portuguese, and see, this is ridiculous how Steam just tells you, it straight up lies to you. It just tells you that these random games, because they maybe have one tag that is somewhat similar to a game you recently played, that they're similar, when you are stretching beyond reality to say Dead Space 3 and Left 4 Dead 2 are anything similar to this game. Not in the spectrum. If you were to make a long line of every single game on Steam and then by one metric or several metrics, you would have placed the two games on that line, those games would be very, very different places. Let's see. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called A Walk Through the Echoes, which looks like it's a platformer where you play as an old woman or an old man with a cane, which is Old Blind Man. That's what it says. $4.24, English and Chinese. This black and white art style, I think, kind of kills this idea. Hit that. Hit that.
Today is your lucky day, my friend.
Let's see. Unity is looking for a senior data science manager, the engine creator, which Unity does not have a lot of jobs that get listed. So if you were interested more in making a game engine than a game, this is probably a great job potential, job lead. I swear we talked about this game, Midnight Legends. It's a fly around in a future car game that looks just like you really wouldn't ever be able to know where you're going or see through the maps and the multiple layers of roads. Early access $9.99, English and Russian. if we really have talked about all these games, then today has also been a fairly low
You must make the
experience
first
as far
move.
as new content.
Scatter like the blossoms. There's a wave coming. Hold on to your cards. Time to splash out.
A fitting end.
Alright, well, we'll just go through all the remaining games, even though they do seem so familiar. We have Rise of Mavros. I may have just looked at these games and not said anything with them. Looks like this might be an interesting game,
Do not seek what is
But-
not there.
maybe not. English full audio, $8.99. It is already on my fall list, so this is a game we already talked about.
Now the fight begins.
Here we have a game called Thief Shop, which looks like it's a player versus player experience. Early access $2.99. Shared split screen PvP. English only. Here we have a game called Beauty Agent, which is tagged nudity and sexual content, and clearly it is just a low effort asset flip game. It is 16% positive, so far into the negative content. And what's funny is, I would say this game is trying way more to have gameplay mechanics than most of the adult content games out there, and it didn't really benefit it any. It's $1.99 English and Chinese. Let's see. Can attack twice.
To desire transformation is sin.
A flash of metal.
Bane and Drain.
If you would destroy the god, how short-sighted.
A fitting end.
How short-sighted.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called A Way to Be Dead, which is mixed, which is a shame because this actually looks visually polished.
Bow before my
Like,
tempest.
This doesn't just feel like an asset flip horror game. So why is it 50% positive?
What fine threads you have.
Very possibly that it is a player versus player experience or a very short experience. Let's see, early access,
This'll be
$6.99 English full audio, also Russian, Turkish, and Chinese, which
I'll sever your life
is
with one
suspect.
Perhaps you
See the negative reviews.
Access.
Wind, grant them courage.
Yeah, it looks like it's a player versus player experience. Yeah, it's online PvP. It's a shame. If this was a single player experience, they probably could polish it a little bit better and actually have an experience there that would catch my attention.
Blow on, dear wind.
Here we have a game called Antithesis, which just looks like a Asteroids clone. $1.99 English full audio. We have about 15 more things. Here we have the Plane Effect Prologue, which I have no interest in playing the prologue. Just wait for the actual game to come out. It's free if you are interested in playing the prologue. Here we have one tag sexual content, so let me make sure it's YouTube family friendly. I haven't even really been doing too much of that lately. Yeah, there's one screenshot with a lot of cleavage, and there's some anime girls with some big boobs, certainly. But yeah, this game, that time I got reincarnated as an orc, is tagged as a JRPG, sexual content for 1709, English, Japanese, and Chinese. I don't think there really is any game here though. Nothing any that is particularly special. It's just in the background when they're not distracting you with the big-breasted anime girls. It just shows a very generic RPG maker style game. 8-bit RPG style game, I guess that's what you would call it. Let's see. 3 turn enemy follower. Let's play this.
Life's a gamble. May as well have fun. Will it be
Hit
crimson
that.
red?
Other dimensions
And
beckon.
then hit that.
Shutting down.
Here we have a game on Steam called Dude Simulator 4. It's 30% positive already. It does just look like a low polygon
Enough with these
joke game. $4.24, English only. Here we have VR balloon flying over Tokyo and Hokkaido. This is seemingly that exact same game with the low frame rate and the birds flying. Either that or somebody has just asset flipped the same content. And I'm about to lose again. Unless there's some trick I can do. I don't think so. Here we have a game called Drive, which is a VR racing game that looks fairly polished, so I think it deserves to be on the follow list. $18.99. It has a VR mode. It's English full audio. It has a standard mode. I don't know if this developer's made anything else. Just a game called Smash Bash Crash, which got no reviews from 2017. Which that's probably doesn't even say anything at all that your game wouldn't have gotten any reviews. Here we have a Chinese game called Simple Parkour, which is an infinite runner for 79 cents, English and Chinese. Not making it to the follow list. Here we have a game called Super Crazy Ninja, which is just a platformer. Pixely platformer for $8.09. Way too expensive. English only. Here we have a game called Nibiru Uncharted Planet, which looks to be a survival first-person shooter space game. It's rated very positively so far. $8.49, English and Russian full audio. Guess I have to put that on the follow list, although I have my suspicions that this survival game wouldn't be much more interesting than any others. There are definitely a couple space games though where you get on planets and then you have this gun-like device to get resources and play survival. And those games did specifically not have large amounts of enemies attacking you, whereas perhaps the game plays a little bit better if you do have enemies attacking you, shooting them. Here we have a game called Seblin Battle, which is some kind of trading card game. I kind of like to see the card art here because it looks like their card art might be more fantasy witches and such. You know what this really feels like is Gwent. Yeah, it definitely feels like they've taken Gwent and put maybe sexy vampire ladies on it instead. Is there any reason why I would want to play Gwent though on Steam? A Gwent knockoff? It's $10.79 single player with online PvP. It probably won't ever have a large audience. It's English only. Seblin character cards. Here you can see it is fantasy elf girls or something. Suggestive and provocative clothing. Yep. I think they're probably pricing this totally wrong, and it should be a free-to-play game, but I'd like to put it on the fall list and see if anybody ever reviews it. Here we have a game called Football Tournament, which looks like it's just a soccer simulator, football simulator. Have no interest. $5.99 English and Russian. Here we have a game called Retrowave Universe, which we've seen several of these games that look like this, and this does not look like a particularly well-polished version of that. Outrun Clones, 99 cents English only. I guess there's maybe some shooting in this game that makes it slightly different, but I don't think that makes it that interesting. Maybe it's more of a rhythm game than it seems on the first move, and you're shooting notes of music. Seems like you're breaking down the simulation as this video goes on and replacing it with an actual road. And once you replace it with a road, you started moving faster. Well, that is something different. Still don't think there's a game there, though. Alright, let's move on. Here we have a game called Crypto's Dead, which probably has more to do with encryption of information than it does cryptocurrencies, which we are in a dangerous position where cryptocurrencies may be the only crypto anybody even talks about anymore. This looks like this might be an interesting puzzle game, maybe a bit like Papers, Please. It definitely feels a little bit like that. $4.49 English and French. Alright, we'll put that on the follow list. Here we have 408 The Forbidden Room, which seems to be a horror asset flip dark screenshot syndrome game. I believe room 408 was one of the rooms that was particularly haunted in the Stanley Hotel in The Stand, or The Shining. Yeah, it was The Shining. English language not supported, $2.54, but English subtitles supported. Portuguese, Brazil, full audio. Here we have a game on Steam from Pico Interactive called First Samurai. I believe this really came out a lot earlier than 2021. This definitely looks like an old 8-bit game, but it's not particularly a relevant 8-bit game, and for $7.99 there's no reason to put it on the follow list. Orcs Must Die 3 is out, and it's rated very positively, which is good because they were trying to make this like side games as service Orcs Must Die series, and that felt like they were taking the series in a bad direction. Now, in a lot of ways, I'm not sure if it's really worth it to play Orcs Must Die as a series, because it is this like tower defense game with a lot of traps and some action combined. It is slightly different from what you'd expect in a tower defense game, but it's only ever so slightly a difference. Bunch of languages here. $29.99. The price is fairly high. Should I put this on the follow list or just put it on the wish list? I think it just follows all the rules to be on the wish list. Alrighty. But yeah, you can see I have Orcs Must Die 2 and Orcs Must Die 1 all on the wish list, and I haven't bothered to purchase any of them. I did play it on the Xbox 360 when it one came out. As far as the game as service, that might be Orcs Must Die 2, but it might be something else. This is also one of those games where co-op gameplay might drastically affect your experience too, as if you're playing with someone else. No, Orcs Must Die 2 looks like a regular game too, so of course the graphics look particularly bad now for like a 9-year-old game. They weren't the greatest of graphics to start with. In a lot of ways, these traps are similar to making like a mob grinder in Minecraft nowadays. Here we have a game on Steam called Jamie's Toy Box, which looks to be a VR game with some toys you could play with. And that seems to be about it. Playroom Simulator, Early Access, $7.55. Third-party English, allegedly full audio. I think that would be really messed up to just put VR glasses on a kid and say, here's your playroom, here's all these toys, and it, like, none of the toys are real and you can't physically touch any of them and you're just in this empty, drab room. Of course, that's always the fear with VR, is that it's going to just replace reality in a lot of ways. Here we have a game called Temple Hunters, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter. Oddly, doesn't seem like you're really hunting temples. If anything, it feels like you're just playing as Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones on a top-down twin-stick shooter. Early access, $9.89. English, allegedly full audio, third-party EULA, and online PvP. So, yeah, I don't think a game like this would have enough of an audience to actually make it to the follow list and get reviewed. And even if it could, it's an online-only game. I don't cover online-only games. That's one of the things about Dead Space 2 being such a co-op focused game, that I definitely had a very different experience versus what I would have had I been the second player in a co-op run. And there's really no way to play the second player Carver story, who is the second character, Carver. You can't play his story in single player, and you can't host a game where you say, I would like to play as Carver. So if you host a game and make a private game, you are going to play as Isaac. So you would have to have a friend host a game, a private game for you, just to see that other experience. Which, that's a lot of hoops for a 7-year-old game to have to pull off. Here we have a game on Steam called Summer of 58, which is a dark screenshot horror game, but some of the video showed me a little bit more polish. Like, it seems to me like there might be a little bit more of a game going on here as far as horror. Enough to at least give it a chance to be on the fall list. It's already 87% positive. So really it should be on the wish list, but I'm not quite to the point where I'm willing to do that. These other games, Locked Up and Find Yourself. probably not as good. This is English and Russian, so it's also a possibility that it's not that good of a game. But it's being reviewed positively, and that's about all I can say. Here we have a game called Arcadius, which is a bunch of arcade games. I think we already talked about this. Free to play, English and French, just doesn't look that interesting. We have about 5 more. Here we have Skydome. I swear we talked about this one. It's online PvP, so no for me. It's coming soon. It's not even got a release date. Here we have a game called The Secret of Retropolis. Which, is this a VR game? Yes it is, but it actually looks like a game, English full audio, for $11.69. So that deserves a follow. Some kind of steampunk VR mystery game. Here we have a game called Fisticubes, which looks like it's just cubes playing player versus player games. Shared split screen, English only, for $3.99. Nothing interesting there. Here we have a game called Craft, which that's far too generic a name. Looks like it's probably a clicker game more than anything, or a resource management game maybe. $4.49, English only. Here we have a game called X Section, which looks like it's a cross section of an image in which you're trying to get an image via the outline. Might be a puzzle here. A puzzle game worth playing. $1.19, English only. What I'd really like to know is how many puzzles are here. Whether it's just 5 or 6, or whether it's hundreds. Yeah, I think you just are supposed to click on the one object. Based on the outline. That might be too easy of a game, really. Then finally we have a game called Super Sammy Roll, which has quite the animation intro to it, and has a decent amount of visual polish to it. Seems like you're kind of playing a marble game, like a Super Monkey Ball type game, but then it seems like you also have some boss fights and some other things. Yeah, this definitely looks like a real game. $9.89, bunch of languages. It deserves to be on the follow list at least. Okay, and so then that is the last thing that I had open. So let me just go through my Twitter feed and see if there's been any new news in the last 2 hours and 2 hours and 43 minutes. Apparently, according to Video Game Chronicles, Netflix is reportedly developing a Pokemon live-action series with Lucifer's showrunner Joe Henderson attached as writer and executive producer. Lucifer is getting a whole nother season, according to Netflix's YouTube trailers, which I found that weird, but yeah, the way they ended the 2 previous seasons kind of ended on a cliffhanger, and I guess maybe they're gonna try a little bit better in this final season to wrap up the whole series. I think that would probably be nice. Although there is some weirdness certainly with the Lucifer Netflix series. It was a Fox series before. I guess it technically is still a Fox series. in that some seasons were much more trying to be a long-running narrative focus, but some seasons and a lot of episodes were just trying to be dumb fun. Let's see, Capcom Digital Foundry has a video talking about the Capcom fix, apparently, which I didn't see that video, so unless I'm misreading this, maybe they're talking about Digital Foundry's original video. I think they're talking about Digital Foundry's original video, not that Digital Foundry has made a new video talking about the Capcom patch in particular. That would be the next step. And definitely I am interested in seeing that. But yeah, I'm misreading the article post. Let's see. Some games came out on this Monday. Like Gamma Sutra has an article here. Valve says every game it has tested on the Steam Deck is hitting at least 30 frames per second. Which, okay. That's not super surprising. At least 30 frames per second is something that would be like a no-duh. Every game should run at least 30 frames. Really should be running closer to 60 frames. I mean, I'm not even super crazy. I'm not talking like 122 or 144 hertz gaming. Whereas I imagine if I could record and upload and play games at 144 hertz, which I probably could play a lot of games at 144 hertz if I had the monitors to work with that, I would probably notice a significant improvement and never want to go back. So I don't want to go down that route until that is just the obvious route. I would be much more interested in buying a new monitor or TV to support high dynamic range, though, than higher frame rates. Frame rates will just be a thing that everybody gets. And I seriously doubt we'll ever have a situation where, like, over-the-air broadcast TV starts releasing at high dynamic range or 2K or higher frame rates. Let's see. Apparently, PlayStation Japan, Sony Interactive Entertainment, has trademarked a game called Kotoba Hakase in Japan. It's the name of a language learning web app at the moment. So apparently there's either some acquisition or acquiring of the software or licensing of the software, or they're just both using the same name. But yeah, until that gets trademarked, I guess in the West, it's just the beginning of something that might actually be news, and you just don't really know. Yeah. So yeah, we had a game come out on Steam here called Gunmancer, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter game. It doesn't particularly look that interesting. It's $7.64, English, Czech, and Russian. We have Mini Racing Worldwide, or Mini Racing World, which just looks like a generic racing game. $16.99, English only, third-party EULA. That is way too expensive. Here we have Find the Cubs, which is a seemingly low polygon animal simulator where you're looking for your cubs, much like Shelter. Although I'm not sure you're actually looking for your cubs in Shelter. $2.99 English only. I think it's probably too generic a game to actually make it to the fall list, but I mean wish list, but I'll put it on the fall list. And then we have a game called Intravenous, where it's a top-down shooter with some brutal graphics from the looks of it. Some dark screenshot syndrome too, however. And I just don't think there's enough game here that I'd want to play. It's not my style of game in particular. Anyways, $11.69. Seems a little expensive too. And then finally, we have Sakura Forest Girls 2, which definitely feels like this has an adult patch somewhere to show nudity. This is from Wing Cloud, the creators of a lot of the Sakura games, English and Chinese. They seem like they have succeeded in listing these on Steam and getting some people to buy them. But I don't think I have any reason why I really would want to cover any of the Sakura games at this point. Sakura again just meaning cherry blossom. We definitely did see several games today, though, on this Monday that had adult content, so I guess the timer is reset. But I would say I'm also still getting the feeling that we're not really getting any Western game developers trying to do anything. That game Succubus is still, I suppose, in development. There was a couple other Western style 3D realistic adult games in development. We've seemingly not seen any Western joke adult games in a long time. And the Eastern, more anime adult games all tend to be pretty awful games too, where it feels like there should be a few more quality products being announced every once in a while. Anyways, I hope this recorded right. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist.